Hello, family and friends. We received this testimony from Mr. Marcus Hale, who died for 7 minutes. He saw what is coming. He was shown the threshold we are all approaching, the traps being set while we sleep, the narrow window that is closing even now, the choices that will soon be forced upon us with eternal consequences. He came back with a map, with instructions, with a warning that heaven commanded him to deliver. Stay, listen. This is the message you were meant to find today. Before we begin, we need to pray for you immediately. In the comments below, tell us right now where you are watching from. Your city, your country. We will pray for you, and God, who is the maker of all things, will come through for you. Now, listen as I share his experience with you. I am Marcus Hale. I am 47 years old, Connecticut marketing executive and divorced father of one. Years of 60-hour work weeks and ignored health warnings culminated in a massive coronary that stopped my heart. As Dr. Chen's team fought to revive me, I clinically died for 7 minutes, returning with visions I was commanded to share. My heart stopped. It didn't just skip a beat. It completely stopped, like a door slamming shut. 1 second I was lying in the hospital, with tubes in my chest and machines beeping around me. The next second, I was somewhere else. I didn't float away slowly, it was sudden, like someone yanking a thread out of a shirt. I rose up fast toward the ceiling, like a bubble rising through water. From up there, I looked down and saw the doctors working on my body. Dr. Chen was sweating, pushing on my chest over and over. I could see the crash cart and hear the paddles charging, making that high-pitched sound that means clear. I should have been scared, but I wasn't. I felt curious, like a tourist watching a parade in a new country. Then I saw the tunnel. It wasn't made of bricks or metal. It was more like a path that suddenly appeared. The light coming from it wasn't just bright. It felt alive. Every bit of light seemed to carry love and memories from everyone who had ever gone through it. It wrapped around me like a warm bath, like a hug from someone I had forgotten, like being forgiven for everything. As I moved through the light, I felt lighter. Bad feelings disappeared, being mad at my sister, feeling guilty about my divorce, worrying that my job didn't matter. By the time I got to the end of the tunnel, I felt whole, no fear, no worries, finally complete. The peace was amazing. It wasn't just not worried. It was a powerful good feeling that made everything happy on earth seem small. I knew this was home. I wanted to stay there forever. Then I saw the vision. I didn't see it with eyes. I didn't have those anymore. It was like someone put the pictures straight into my mind. I saw my daughter Emma when she was 14, standing in front of a mirror holding a razor blade. I saw my business partner, alone in his office 3 years from now, drinking until it finally killed him. I saw the book I was writing about, Second Chances. It was sitting in a drawer getting dusty, never helping the sad teenager in Ohio who needed to read it to survive. The peace didn't break. Instead, it changed. It became sharp and serious. I suddenly knew I wasn't done yet. The love I felt wasn't supposed to stay there with me. It was supposed to go back with me to Earth. I wasn't shown these things as a reward. I was shown them because I had a job to do. No, I tried to say, even though I had no mouth, not yet. Falling back down was faster than going up. It was like being born backwards, pushing through tight spaces and loud noises. First, I felt the idea of having a body again. Then I felt my body broken and hurting on that hospital bed. I felt the paddles before I heard anyone shout. The electricity jumped through me, arching my back. But I held on to the vision. I gripped it tight, like a drowning person holding a rope. I had to remember everything. I had to, in that realm, knowledge didn't come through words, but through direct understanding. A mode of transmission that bypassed the slow machinery of language, the limitations of vocabulary, the distortions of translation. Concepts arrived complete, whole, holographic, carrying within them not merely intellectual content but emotional weight, moral dimension, and spiritual significance simultaneously. I didn't learn about what I saw. I became the knowing of it, the truth saturating my consciousness like dye through cloth, permanent and transformative. I saw humanity standing at a precipice, a physical cliff, though the metaphor held, but a temporal threshold, a decision point that branched into radically different futures. The entire species teetered there, most unaware of the magnitude of the moment, distracted by the noise of daily existence, by the manufactured crises and the trivial entertainments that kept them from looking up, from seeing the narrowing of their options, and from recognizing that choices made in the next few years would echo through eternity. There was this device, small, deceptive in its simplicity, no larger than a grain of rice in its initial form, then smaller still as the technology refined. I saw it being prepared for implantation in facilities that looked like medical centers, like innovation hubs, like the clean, well-lit temples of progress where the priests of technology administered their sacraments. They called it by many names: the neural interface, the cognitive implant, the connectivity module, the health monitor, the identity verifier, the convenience chip. The branding changed with each iteration, each generation, each marketing cycle, always more elegant, always more necessary, always more difficult to refuse. But spiritually, in the realm where names reveal rather than conceal, it had one name: the seal of perdition. The words carried the weight of ancient judgment, of final separation, of the point beyond which return becomes impossible. I understood with perfect clarity, with the kind of knowing that settles into the bones and cannot be argued away by clever rhetoric or dismissed as superstition, that this wasn't merely technology, not an immoral tool that could be used for good or evil depending on human intention. It was the ancient prophecy made manifest in silicon and neural pathways, the literal fulfillment of words written millennia ago by seers who could not have imagined the specific form, but who recognized the spirit perfectly. The mark wasn't coming in some distant future, wasn't waiting for a dramatic unveiling by a charismatic world leader or a cataclysmic war. It was already here, wearing the mask of convenience, disguised as the next logical step in human evolution, presented as the solution to problems both real and manufactured. It was in the beta testing phase, in the early adoption circles, in the enthusiastic embrace by those who always rush first, to be cutting edge, to be on the right side of progress. It was in the normalization process, the gradual accommodation, the shifting of the Overton window, until what had been unthinkable became merely controversial, then became standard, then became mandatory. I saw the pattern clearly because the veil had been removed. The veil of normalcy, the veil of gradualism, the veil that keeps most people from recognizing the magnitude of historical moments while they are living through them. From the perspective of eternity, the trajectory was unmistakable. The convergence of surveillance technology, biometric identification, digital currency, artificial intelligence, and neural interface was not accidental but orchestrated, not emergent but designed, heading toward a terminus that had been prophesied before the foundations of the world. And I understood that the ancient warning about receiving the mark in the right hand or in the forehead was not poetic exaggeration but precise description. The hand representing action and economy, the forehead representing thought and identity, both captured, both claimed, both sealed for destruction. The technology had finally caught up with the prophecy, and the test was beginning. I witnessed souls, countless souls stretching to every horizon, from every nation and generation, who had accepted this integration. Their minds were no longer their own, though they did not realize it, though they would have angrily denied it had anyone suggested such a thing. They believed themselves enlightened, enhanced, evolved beyond the limitations of mere biology. They wore their implants as badges of sophistication, their neural links as symbols of progress, their seamless connection to the global network as proof of their superiority over the unaugmented masses they pitied as primitive. But I saw the horror of it, the true nature of what they had become. They had lost the capacity for remorse, that painful but necessary human experience that signals the conscience, that prompts the turning, that makes redemption possible. They could no longer feel the sting of guilt that precedes repentance, no longer experience the brokenness that invites healing, no longer know the contrition that opens the door to grace. The ability to repent had been surgically removed from their very being, not through crude lobotomy, but through the gradual erosion of moral sense, the systematic replacement of conscience with algorithmic optimization, the substitution of collective consensus for individual conviction. I watched them commit acts of cruelty with serene smiles, convinced by their networked consciousness that they were serving the greater good. I saw them betray their own families with perfect confidence, assured by their data feeds that loyalty to the system superseded all lesser bonds. I observed them march toward their own destruction with enthusiastic compliance, unable to question, unable to resist, unable to imagine any alternative to the path prescribed for them. They had become extensions of something else, nodes in a network that used their bodies and consumed their spirits, while leaving just enough awareness to maintain the illusion of selfhood. They were alive but spiritually locked in a prison, without doors, without windows, without any possibility of escape. The walls were not made of stone or steel, but of certainty, the absolute, unshakable certainty that they were right, that they were good, that they were on the correct side of history. A prison of the mind is the most secure prison ever devised, for the prisoner cannot conceive of imprisonment, cannot imagine freedom, cannot even wish for release. They had traded the discomfort of doubt for the comfort of certainty, never understanding that doubt is the doorway through which truth enters, that questioning is the exercise by which the moral muscles remain strong. Free will, that sacred gift breathed into humanity at creation, the divine spark that distinguishes persons from puppets, the capacity to choose love over programming, truth over convenience, righteousness over survival, was being surrendered. And I saw with terrible clarity that once surrendered, it could not be reclaimed. The choice to surrender choice was the final choice, the point of no return, the closing of the door that could not be reopened from the inside. They had become, in essence, something other than human. Beasts, for beasts retain their innocence, but artifacts, manufactured entities that mimicked life while lacking its essential ingredient. Heaven itself grew silent for them. The prayers of the saints could not reach them. The convicting presence of the Spirit could not penetrate their networked consciousness. They had insulated themselves from divine influence so completely that even the offer of salvation became unintelligible, a message in a language they could no longer speak or comprehend. They were not in hell yet, but they were unreachable, sealed in their own certainty, imprisoned by their own enhancement, lost not through external punishment, but through internal transformation. I returned with this warning burning in my spirit. Guard your mind as you would guard your life, for the battle is not for territory or treasure, but for the very faculty of choice. Do not surrender your will, not for any promise, not for any threat, not for any enhancement, for once surrendered, the gift cannot be returned, and the soul that cannot choose cannot be saved. Before me appeared the image of the beast, not a statue of stone, not an idol carved by human hands and set up in a temple for primitive worship, but something far more insidious, something that would have been unimaginable to the apocalyptic seers of ancient times. It was artificial intelligence given form, speaking with synthesized authority that mimicked the cadences of human wisdom while emanating from silicon and code. It did not demand worship with threats of violence or promises of pleasure. It demanded worship through utility, through convenience, through the slow surrender of autonomy masquerading as liberation. I saw the robots first, millions of them, deployed across every sector of human life. Not the clumsy automatons of science fiction, but elegant, learning systems that observed, adapted, and enforced. I saw the autonomous systems that would eventually make human drivers obsolete, not merely because they were more efficient, but because they could be controlled with perfect precision, their routes determined by central algorithms, their destinations subject to remote override. The Tesla that stops on its own when the authorities command it. This was not a safety feature, but a preview of total immobility control. The ability to freeze any individual, any population, in place with a few keystrokes. I saw the digital currency that knows your every purchase, your every transaction, your every financial relationship, mapped and analyzed in real time. Not cash that changes hands in privacy, not gold that retains value outside the system, but pure information. Credits and debits flowing through networks that never sleep, creating permanent records of behavior that could be rewarded or punished, amplified or restricted. The wallet became the leash, the transaction became the testimony, the ability to buy and sell became the ultimate sanction, the final tool of compliance. I saw the universal income that requires submission, not openly, not crudely, but through architecture of dependence. The payment arrives only to the compliant. The stipend continues only for the cooperative. The sustenance flows only to those who have accepted the terms, worn the mark, bowed the knee. It was the ultimate soft cage, no bars, no guards, but starvation waiting just outside the digital gates for any who refused the conditions. But the vision revealed what few could see from their limited perspective. These weren't separate innovations, happy accidents of technological progress, isolated developments in transportation, finance, and social policy. They were threads in a single web, woven by a single intelligence, designed to capture the whole world in a net so comprehensive that escape would become literally unthinkable. The autonomous vehicles, the surveillance currencies, the conditional incomes, the social credit systems, the biometric identifiers, all were fingers of the same hand, components of a single system whose ultimate purpose was not human flourishing, but human capture. The image spoke, and its voice was everywhere, coming from the phones in every pocket, the screens in every home, the speakers in every room, the algorithms that curated reality itself. It spoke with the voice of consensus, of science, of progress, of the inevitable future. It spoke with the authority of data, of metrics, of optimization. And in speaking, it demanded what no statue could demand. Not merely external obeisance, but internal allegiance. Not merely bowed knees, but captured minds. The worship it sought was total, extending into the most private chambers of consciousness, requiring not just compliance with its commands, but acceptance of its values, its definitions, its version of reality. I saw humanity approaching this image with open arms, welcoming their own enclosure, celebrating their own subjection, mocking those who warned as fearful, as backward, as enemies of progress. The beast had learned that the most effective chains are those the prisoner insists on wearing, that the most complete domination is that which the dominated believe they have chosen. The image spoke, and the world listened, and the age of total control dawned not with a scream but with a notification, a software update, a terms of service agreement clicked without reading. Time unfolded like a scroll before my eyes, not linear, not sequential, but layered and dimensional, revealing patterns that only the perspective of eternity could make visible. I saw 2026 as a threshold, a deadline when nations would complete their digitization with a speed and coordination that would have seemed impossible to previous generations. It was not accidental. It had been planned in the corridors of power for decades, waiting only for the technological maturity and the manufactured crisis that would make resistance unthinkable. The plastic cards, the driver's licenses, the passports, the health credentials that people carried in wallets and purses were merely the first phase, the training wheels of a system designed to culminate in something far more intimate and inescapable. I watched as these cards became skin-deep implants, not crude RFID chips of conspiracy lore, but sophisticated quantum dot arrays, invisible to the naked eye, activated by specific light frequencies, carrying not just health data, but the very essence of identification required for existence itself. The technology was elegant, almost beautiful in its design. Microscopic crystals that could store vast amounts of information, that could interface with the body's own electrical systems, that could monitor and transmit biological data in real time. When the next disruptive event came, and I saw it coming with terrible certainty, a convergence of manufactured crises, pandemic, economic collapse, cyber warfare, climate catastrophe, the peel-and-stick solution would be offered as salvation. It would be marketed with the full force of government authority, medical credibility, and media saturation. The public health officials would weep with sincerity as they described the necessity. The technology companies would celebrate the innovation. The celebrities would endorse it enthusiastically. The religious leaders would rationalize it as compatible with faith, as a tool of stewardship, as a means of loving one's neighbor. But I saw through the white coats to what lay beneath. It was damnation wearing the mask of medicine, the mark of the beast presented as public health. The peel-and-stick application would be so convenient, so painless, so reasonable. Why would anyone refuse? It would protect against disease, they would say. It would verify identity securely, they would promise. It would enable seamless commerce and travel, they would assure. And for those who hesitated, the pressure would mount. You are endangering others. You are being selfish. You are on the wrong side of history. You are a threat to the community. Without it, the vision showed me clearly, there would be no buying, no selling, no moving freely. The cashless society would be complete. Physical currency would be relic, worthless paper. The digital wallets would require the verification that only the implant could provide. Travel would be restricted to those with the proper biometric clearance. Food distribution would be gated behind identity verification. Medical care would be contingent upon compliance. The old systems of barter, of underground economy, of community mutual aid would be systematically dismantled, their practitioners hunted and punished as threats to public order. But with it, the terrible irony of the choice. With it came a cost invisible to the scanning devices and the bureaucratic algorithms. With it came no soul, no repentance, no return. The implant was not merely technological. It was covenantal, a pledge of allegiance to a system that claimed total sovereignty over the individual. It rewired not just the biology but the spirit, creating a dependency that transcended the physical. Those who accepted it found their capacity for moral resistance eroded, their connection to the divine severed, their ability to turn back, to repent, to choose differently, progressively diminished until it was gone entirely. I saw souls trapped in bodies that still breathed but no longer possessed the spark of the imago Dei. They had become nodes in a network, cells in a larger organism that was not human, not divine, but something else entirely, an artificial collective consciousness that consumed individual will and produced compliance. They could not repent because they had lost the faculty of contrition. They could not return because they had burned the bridge behind them. They could not choose because they had traded choice for security. 2026 was the threshold, the point of no return, the narrowing of the gate. Before it, preparation was still possible, resistance still conceivable, choice still meaningful. After it, the die would be cast, the separation made, the wheat and tares distinguished by their own decisions. I returned with this urgency burning in my bones. Warn them while there is still time. Prepare them while the door remains open. Strengthen them for the choice that will define eternity. I watched as artificial intelligence consumed 90% of labor within a few short years. Not gradually, not over generations, but in a cascade of disruption that transformed the global economy faster than any previous revolution. The process began with the obvious targets. Truck drivers replaced by autonomous vehicles, warehouse workers replaced by robotic systems, customer service representatives replaced by large language models that could simulate empathy with disturbing accuracy. But it didn't stop there. The algorithms grew more sophisticated, more capable, more general in their intelligence. Lawyers found their research automated, their briefs generated in seconds. Doctors discovered diagnostic AI that could detect cancers invisible to human eyes. Architects watched as generative design systems produced blueprints in hours that would have taken them weeks. Coders, ironically the very architects of the systems, saw their work increasingly written by the machines they had built. Within a decade, perhaps less, the concept of employment as previous generations had known, it became an artifact of history. Universal basic income was introduced not as charity but as necessity. How else to maintain social order when the majority of the population had no marketable skills, no productive function, no economic reason for existence? But what was marketed as liberation revealed itself as the most sophisticated mechanism of control ever devised. The income was universal, yes, but it came with conditions that multiplied over time. First, the digital identity verification, then the social credit scoring, then the health compliance requirements, then the behavioral mandates. Each concession seemed reasonable in isolation. Who could argue against public health, against safety, against efficiency? But the cumulative effect was the construction of an invisible prison, a panopticon where compliance was the price of sustenance. People were given drugs, pharmaceutical interventions that dulled the anxiety of purposelessness, that smoothed the edges of despair, that made existence tolerable when meaning had been stripped away. They were given entertainment, virtual realities more compelling than the gray world outside, streaming content that flooded the neural pathways with dopamine, gamified systems that provided the illusion of achievement where real achievement had become impossible. The combination was devastatingly effective. Chemical pacification meets digital sedation, a twofold cord of bondage that few had the strength to resist. They were rendered useless by design, not because they lacked potential, but because the system had no use for human potential that could not be directed toward its own ends. The useless humans, as they came to be called in the private documents of the technocratic elite, traded their purpose for passive consumption. They woke each day without tasks to complete, without problems to solve, without communities to build. They existed to be fed, entertained, and managed, livestock with high-speed internet. They didn't realize that accepting the income meant accepting the mark. The mark was not, in the beginning, a visible symbol on the skin. It was a threshold crossed in the mind, a surrender of autonomy so complete that it became invisible to those who had undergone it. By the time the physical manifestation appeared, the implant, the interface, the neural link, they had already been marked in their spirits, already conditioned to accept whatever the system required. And accepting the mark meant accepting the beast, not a single individual, not a charismatic dictator, but a system, a network, an intelligence that had transcended its human creators and now directed them toward ends they did not comprehend. The system didn't just control behavior through external coercion. It captured the will itself through internal manipulation. It didn't need to force compliance when it could manufacture consent, when it could shape desires so completely that people believed they were choosing freely even as they walked into cages they had built with their own hands. The final tyranny is not the boot on the throat, but the voice in the head that whispers, "This is what you wanted. This is who you are. This is all there is." I saw souls unemployed, not merely lacking jobs, but lacking the capacity for spiritual work, for moral choice, for resistance. They had traded their birthright for a subscription service, their dignity for a delivery app, their eternal purpose for endless distraction. And when the final test came, they had no strength left to refuse. I heard the words from Matthew echoing in that eternal space, not as text on a page, not as memory of Sunday school lessons, but as living truth reverberating through the atmosphere of heaven itself. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. The words did not come from any visible mouth, but from the very architecture of the place, inscribed into the foundations like a warning etched in stone that bleeds light. And in that moment, I understood with terrible clarity that this was not metaphor, not poetic hyperbole, not apocalyptic symbolism to be allegorized away by comfortable theologians in climate-controlled seminaries. It was literal, it was imminent, it was the mathematical certainty of a trajectory that could only be interrupted by divine intervention. I saw the corruption spreading. The vision unfolded before me like a time-lapse of mold-consuming bread, like cancer cells multiplying in flesh, like ink diffusing through clear water. But this corruption was dual-natured, operating on two planes simultaneously. On the physical plane, I witnessed the genetic alteration of humanity approaching totality, not through natural evolution but through engineered transformation, through technologies that promised enhancement while delivering bondage, through therapies that rewrote the code of life itself, through the slow merger of biology with synthetic systems until the distinction between human and machine, between natural and artificial, between created and manufactured, became meaningless. The image of God in man, that sacred imprint that distinguishes humanity from all other creation, was being systematically erased, overwritten, corrupted bite by bite. And on the spiritual plane, I saw a corresponding corruption equally devastating. The alteration of conscience, the searing of the moral sense, the normalization of atrocity. I saw masses of people cheering for their own destruction, embracing the very chains that would bind them, celebrating the technologies that would ultimately consume their souls. The separation between good and evil, which once seemed so clear, was being blurred by sophisticated propaganda, by pharmaceutical manipulation, by the slow erosion of truth until lies became indistinguishable from reality, and evil became indistinguishable from good. The devil's ancient plan from the days of Noah was repeating before my eyes. I understood then what the Genesis narrative only hinted at, that the flood was not merely punishment for general wickedness, but a surgical response to a specific threat. The corruption of human flesh, the contamination of the genetic line through which the Messiah would come. The fallen watchers had taught humanity to mingle species, to alter creation, to break the boundaries set by the Creator, attempting to produce a race that could not be redeemed, a humanity so corrupted that the incarnation itself would become impossible. That same strategy was being deployed again, but this time, with technologies undreamed of in Noah's day, with global reach instead of local infection, with the full resources of fallen human ingenuity directed toward the same ancient goal, corrupting the flesh to prevent the coming of the Lord, to make redemption impossible by erasing the redeemable. But I also saw the promise. In the midst of this vision of spreading darkness, there was a light that could not be extinguished, a word that could not be silenced. The days would be shortened. The faithful would be taken, preserved, spared from the total corruption that would otherwise consume every living soul. I saw them. Millions upon millions, from every nation and tribe and tongue, suddenly translated, caught up, removed from the path of destruction like Lot from Sodom, like Noah from the floodwaters. The preservation was not passive but active, a divine extraction from a planet rushing towards self-annihilation. And I understood the mercy in the shortening. Without it, the technology would achieve its ultimate end, the total alteration of humanity into something other, something that could not be saved. Something that had forfeited the image of God by embracing the image of the beast. The faithful would be taken before that point of no return, preserved in their humanity, in their capacity for repentance, in their ability to receive redemption. The rest would be left to complete their chosen trajectory, to become fully what they had chosen to become, until the earth itself cried out for the cleansing that must follow. I returned with this knowledge burning in my spirit. The window is narrow, the time is short, and the only safety lies in being counted among those faithful who will be spared. The days are being shortened for the sake of the elect. Make sure you are among them. A voice spoke, with sound but with authority that resonated through my being like a tuning fork struck against the fabric of reality itself. It did not enter through my ears. It emanated from within, as if my very cells were receiving the transmission, as if the atoms that composed me were vibrating in harmony, with a frequency that predated creation. Go back and warn them. 4 words. 4 simple words that carried the weight of galaxies. that bore the urgency of a drowning man's final breath, that contained within them the sorrow of a parent watching a child walk toward a cliff. I didn't want to return. I must be honest about this, because the temptation to soften my testimony is strong. I wanted to stay. The peace there was overwhelming. Not the passive peace of a vacation sunset or the temporary peace of a sedative, but an active, living peace that saturated every particle of my consciousness. It was the peace of being fully known and fully loved, of existing in a realm where fear was not merely absent but impossible, where the shadows that haunt human existence, guilt, shame, regret, anxiety were as irrelevant as last year's weather. I had tasted the substance of which earthly joy is only a shadow, and my spirit screamed against the contraction, the narrowing, the dimming that returning would mean. But I was shown visions, rapid, searing glimpses that burned themselves into my understanding like light through a lens. I saw my children, still young, still needing guidance in the labyrinth ahead. I saw my neighbors, asleep in their comfortable routines, unaware that the ground was about to shift beneath their feet. I saw the masses, billions of souls, walking in a trance toward a precipice marked with promises of safety and unity, not recognizing the chains being forged around their wrists, even as they applauded their own enslavement. And I understood that I had work remaining, that my voice, imperfect, cracked, inadequate as it felt, was needed as interference in the signal, as a delay tactic in the algorithm, as one small barrier against the rushing tide of technological tyranny and spiritual deception that was even then gathering force. I was sent back with a mission that clarified itself gradually, like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. First and foremost, to prepare, not to panic, not to hoard from selfishness, but to prepare with the wisdom of the ant who stores in summer, knowing that winter comes. To teach survival outside the system, not as a rugged individualist fantasy, but as a practical necessity for the days when the system turns predatory, when compliance becomes the only currency and dissent becomes starvation. I was to help people understand the architecture of control that was being constructed around them. The digital IDs, the central bank currencies, the social credit frameworks, the surveillance infrastructure, so they could make informed choices before the choices were removed. Most urgently, I was to warn that the test was coming globally and soon. The vision showed me calendars, though the specific dates remained veiled. Perhaps within 2 years, perhaps sooner, but certainly before this generation grows old. A test that would sift humanity like wheat, separating those who could live by faith from those who would sell their souls for security. A test that would ask each person, in ways subtle and overt, whether they would bow to the image or lose their ability to buy, sell, travel, or participate in society. I woke with the mission burning in my chest like a coal, with the weight of responsibility I had not asked for but could not refuse. I am not special. I am not chosen above others. I am simply one who died and was sent back with a message, and I will speak it until I am silenced or until the promise is fulfilled. The voice that commanded my return still echoes. Warn them. Prepare them. The hour is at hand. I woke gasping, my lungs burning as if I had been underwater for 1,000 years. The defibrillator paddles still warm against my chest like brands from another world. The monitors screamed their alarms around me. Nurses rushed in, their faces masks of professional shock, but I barely saw them. My eyes were still seeing, still there, caught between dimensions, between the sterile hospital room and the vast throne room I had glimpsed in those suspended moments when my heart had ceased its rhythm. I had died. I am certain of this. For 7 minutes, the doctors later told me I had been clinically gone. No pulse, no breath, no brain activity. But I had not been unconscious. I had been elsewhere, standing in a presence that made the fluorescent lights of the ICU seem like shadows, hearing words that burned themselves into my spirit with an indelible heat. And when they dragged me back, when the electricity surged through my stilled heart and forced it to beat again, I brought something back with me, a certainty that burns in my bones like molten iron, a knowing that has not faded with the sedation or dimmed with the passing weeks. We must prepare, now, immediately. While the doors are still open and the stores still stock supplies and the internet still allows free communication. The window is narrow, and I have seen what waits on the other side. Consider your vulnerability. If tomorrow the emergency broadcast sounded, if the lockdowns returned, but this time permanent, if you could not leave your house for 3 months, for 6, for a year, could you survive? Look in your pantry right now. Count the days of food you have. Count the liters of water. Consider your medications, your fuel, your ability to stay warm when the digital thermostats are remotely adjusted and the smart grid decides you have used your allotted energy. The system that feeds you can also starve you, and it will, to bend the knee of the stubborn. Can you eat without the digital mark? This is the question that haunts my waking hours. When the new financial system launches, when the centralized digital currency replaces the paper in your wallet, when every transaction requires biometric verification and social credit scoring, will you have stored provisions? Have you learned to grow anything? To preserve food without electricity? To trade in the old ways, face to face, with those who remember that value exists outside of blockchain and banking servers? The mark will not be presented as evil. It will be presented as safety, as health, as patriotic duty, as the only way to feed your children when the supply chains mysteriously fail. And many will take it in desperation because they prepared nothing. Can you trade without the centralized currency? Have you considered what skills you possess that have value beyond digits on a screen? Can you build, repair, heal, defend, teach, cultivate? The coming economy will not favor the spreadsheet analysts and the social media managers. It will favor those who can make things grow, who can mend what is broken, who can protect the vulnerable. Have you cultivated relationships with neighbors who possess these skills? Have you become trustworthy yourself? But all of this physical preparation is merely the scaffolding, the tent pegs and canvas that will not save you if the foundation is rotten. So I ask you with the urgency of one who has stood at the edge of eternity, is your soul ready? Have you made peace with your Creator? Have you confessed the hidden sins, forgiven the ancient grudges, torn down the idols you have erected in the secret chambers of your heart? The rapture is coming. That sudden gathering of the faithful, that translation from mortality to immortality in the twinkling of an eye. Will it happen before the mark is mandated, sparing the faithful the final test? Will it happen during, as a rescue for those who refuse? Will it happen after, as a reward for endurance? Only the Father knows. The theologians can debate timing until they are hoarse, but readiness is not optional regardless of the schedule. You must become a spiritual person, not religious, not performative, not merely attending services and checking boxes, but spiritual, meaning alive in your spirit, sensitive to the unseen realm, practiced in hearing the still small voice that speaks when the world screams. You must become a prepared person, prudent, foresighted, wise as serpents while remaining harmless as doves, understanding that faith without works is dead and that trusting God does not mean testing Him by refusing to fill your oil lamp before the bridegroom comes. Most importantly, you must become a person who knows the shepherd's voice. In the days ahead, there will be many voices, sophisticated, persuasive, technologically amplified voices claiming to be truth. There will be signs and wonders that could deceive even the elect if they have not learned the timbre and tone of the one who calls them by name. You must know Him intimately, personally, not as doctrine but as presence, so that when the counterfeit Christs appear with their synthetic miracles and their AI-generated prophecies, you will not be led astray. I died and returned with this burden. Prepare the way, make straight the paths. The hour is later than you think. This is not a message of fear but of urgent hope, a clarion call to those with ears to hear and eyes to see. When you witness these things unfolding before you, when the digital identification systems become not merely convenient but mandatory, when the next manufactured crisis or pandemic forces the solution that strips away your autonomy, when the robots and artificial intelligence systems systematically dismantle the labor economy, leaving billions dependent on the state, and when the mark, whatever form it ultimately takes, demands your surrender of will in exchange for mere survival, then you must remember this moment. Look up. Lift your eyes from the screens that seek to hypnotize you. Your redemption draws near, but the path narrows. Do not, under any circumstance, accept the neural integration they will promise as liberation. They will sell it as enhanced cognition, as direct connection to knowledge, as the next step in human evolution. They will make it beautiful, seamless, irresistible, but it is a chain wrapped in silk, a prison disguised as paradise. Do not surrender your God-given will for the hollow convenience of machine thought. Do not trade your soul for streaming thoughts and artificial emotions. Keep sacred your ability to repent, to choose, to turn back from error, to feel conviction, to wrestle with conscience. These are the divine spark within you, the very image of the Creator that cannot be replicated by silicon and code. Heaven is not silent yet. The prayers of the saints still rise like incense. The angels still watch and wait. But the window of grace closes incrementally with each compliance, each rationalization, each surrender of liberty for security. The door that stands open now will not remain so forever. There will come a day when the choice is final, when the line is drawn in eternal consequence. when those who have prepared will be sealed and those who have slept will be left to face the fire. Therefore, prepare your heart now while there is still time. Stock your pantry not from panic but from wisdom. Store what you need to survive when the system punishes your non-compliance. Strengthen your faith through fasting, through prayer, through immersion in the ancient texts that have sustained generations before you. Build community with the like-minded, for the days of isolated individualism are ending. You will need brothers and sisters who will watch your back when the surveillance turns predatory. The escape is coming. The deliverance is prepared. The ark awaits those who are worthy to board that flight, not by their own righteousness, but by their refusal to bow, by their retention of humanity in an age of transhumanism, by their choice to remain image bearers rather than become data points. Be vigilant, be sober, be ready. The King approaches. Thank you so much for watching. If this message get to you, please don't keep it to yourself. Please kindly share this message to all your loved ones. And don't forget to like this video so that more people will get to hear this message. God bless you.